Chapter 28-27. Miao Yuan knew that becoming the Saintess was the greatest guarantee for Miao Yi's future. So she gritted her teeth with her seriously injured body, and Miao Ji left the small courtyard where she lived with Miao Yi. Moved to the place where the Saintess lived. In the first few days, Miao Yi thought her mother was taken away by her aunt for treatment. But 7 days passed. She still did not hear any news about her mother and aunt. Miao Yi also felt something was wrong. She was only 7 years old and she was famous for being a waste. The Miao people did not treat Miao Yi as the second miss of Miao tribe, nor were they wary of her. Miao Yi asked around. From the gossip of the Miao people, he got some information. For example, because of Madame Miao's ruthless attack this time, Miao Yuan was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Miao Yuan was afraid, so he handed his dying sister to Madame Miao. And on the day he handed her over, Miao Yuan died. The cause of death was unknown. But the Miao people knew. Madame Miao hated Miao Yuan so much, how could Miao Yuan survive in her hands? As for Miao Ji, because she handed over her sister. It seemed that she was rewarded by Madame Miao and went to live a good life. Miao Yi could not be sure whether these gossips were true or false. And the only thing she could be sure of was, Miao Rongrong had come to her with her fangs and claws bared. Her mother was indeed dead. Indeed, Miao Ji handed her to Madame Miao personally. At that moment, Miao Yi's heart was completely swallowed by darkness. She became a child without a father or mother. She became the lowest person in Miao tribe. Anyone could trample on her pride at will. She promised her mother, before she could confirm that she was the Saintess, don't show your talent and strength in Gu. She always remembered this advice. And paid a real price. No matter how hard the days were. In the eyes of outsiders, she was still a waste to the point that everyone could bully. But in private, Miao Yi never relaxed her absorption of Miao tribe's Gu. She put all her effort into cultivation. She wanted to become the Saintess of Miao tribe. Open and above board. Kill Madame Miao, Miao Yixiong, Miao Rongrong. Then find Miao Ji and make her kneel in front of her mother's grave to apologize. To avenge his mother. The memories ended. After Miao Ji told him everything, her face was visibly relieved. It was probably because these words had been suppressed in his heart for far too long. She couldn't bear the pressure anymore. Yi didn't know that you were just acting as the sacred maiden for her for 4 years? After Yi Qing Luo heard all the memories, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. How fate made fools of people. Yes. Miao Ji shook her head. Yi Qing Luo sighed. It was no wonder that Miao Yi would reveal such an expression when she saw Miao Ji. His hatred towards Miao Ji had risen so quickly in that instant. Miao Ji could be considered as her mother's murderer. How much he loved and respected Miao Ji. After seeing Miao Ji become the holy virgin of the Miao tribe, her hatred for Miao Ji deepened. In Miao Yi's heart she must have thought, Miao Jining became the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. It was because he had handed over Miao Yuan that he had this opportunity. It was even more likely that he would feel. The position of Saintess that Miao Shi had promised was given to her. But in the end, Miao Ji became the Saintess. Then Miao Ji must have used some method to snatch the position which originally belonged to her. This misunderstanding. Chapter 28-28. Back then, why did you hand Yi's mother over to that Madame Miao? Although Yi Qing Luo had some guesses, but she still wanted to hear it from Miao Ji personally. Miao Ji's eyes drooped down, her pale fingers curled up tightly. When she opened her mouth again, her voice was obviously bitter. That was sister's last request, I had no choice but to do so. Saying that, her voice was already choked with sobs. She stopped and closed her eyes, suppressing the grievance in her heart. For so many years, Miao Yi had been misunderstanding her. And she, for the sake of the big picture, swallowed all these grievances. And now she could finally speak out this grievance. Sister, because of protecting Yi, was seriously injured. Even if she used medicinal pills to hang on, she would not live for more than a few days. Because she knew her own body, after sister asked me to bring her away from Yi, she took the initiative to send her to Madame Miao to make a deal with Madame Miao. Madame Miao indeed hated sister. Sister's existence was like a constant reminder to her that her daughter was not the direct bloodline of the Gu king. Her daughter was not the proper eldest miss of the Miao family. When I acted according to sister's wishes, as long as we hand over sister, Madame Miao would use the Miao tribe's poison to swear not to hurt Yi. And also promise to let Yi live, to live till 15 years old. Madame Miao agreed to it. After Miao Ji finished saying these, she was already sobbing. Memories of the past kept surfacing in his mind. And it kept replaying the scene of how she handed Miao Yuan over to Madame Miao. And also saw with her own eyes, how her own sister died in Madame Miao's hands. Yiqing Luo remained silent. She guessed that Miao Ji handed Miao Yuan over had a motive. But she didn't expect it would be for such a motive. Indeed, such a choice. If it was her, she would also do the same. Miss Yi. Miao Ji took a deep breath, stopping herself from losing her composure. One hand was still covering her mouth as she choked and asked, even if everything had a reason, do you think Yi Shi will forgive me? Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly, not giving an immediate answer. Her clear eyes flickered as she shifted her gaze towards Zhou Xian. She clenched the man's fingers tightly. Whether I forgive or not, it's not up to me to decide. After Yiqing Luo finished this sentence, her fingers clenched even tighter. She looked at the man's pale face. She recalled the pain she had felt earlier and how she could only walk by relying on him. Her eyes flickered, but in the end she still chose selfishness. I promise you that I will give you a chance to explain your misunderstanding calmly, but whether or not you can forgive her will depend on Yi's choice. After saying that, her gaze slowly turned to a certain direction outside the house. How long more do you plan to squat there and eavesdrop? Yiqing Luo's words had just landed. Miao Ji's entire body stiffened, as though she understood the meaning behind Zhou Xian's words. Her eyes suddenly widened as she looked towards the direction where Yiqing Luo's gaze had landed. The wind blew, bringing with it the fragrance of the surrounding grass and leaves that were the food of the goo worms. There was also the rustling sound of countless goo worms squirming. Even after staring for a long time, the figure that Zhou Xian had imagined did not appear before him. Miao Ji's initial nervousness gradually turned into disappointment. Chapter 28-29. Not coming out means that after you know the truth, you're unable to face your aunt? Yiqing Luo didn't mind Miao Ji's words as she continued looking at that direction. Or is it because, even after knowing the truth, you're still unable to forgive her? Miao Ji's expression froze on her face when she heard what she said. Her face started to turn pale. Her clenched fists clenched even tighter. Yiqing Luo was so certain. He was certain that Miao Yi was not far away from this guest room. Which meant to say that all the memories she mentioned earlier. Miao Yi heard all of it. Miao Yi knew the cause and effect of everything. Was it as what Yiqing Luo said, unable to face her? Or was it because she was unable to forgive? In this uneasy atmosphere, the atmosphere was very tense. A young lady dressed in the Miao tribe's sacred maiden candidate's attire slowly walked into their sight. The young lady's face was filled with tears. A pair of beautiful eyes stared intently at Miao Ji as though she was confirming something. When Miao Ji's gaze fell onto the young lady's face, she seemed to have turned into a fossil as she froze on the spot. Didn't you want a chance for the both of you to resolve the misunderstanding peacefully? Why are you still in a daze here for? Yiqing Luo shot a glance at Miao Ji as she spoke calmly. These two had been toyed with by fate and there were too many misunderstandings between them. The matters between them. Outsiders couldn't interfere. Only if the both of them were frank and open, saying out what was in their hearts, could it be resolved. Yiqing Luo had no intention to interfere in their grudges. Miao Ji's throat moved as her pale lips trembled slightly. But after some time she couldn't spit out a single word. If one took a closer look, one would be able to tell. At this moment, Miao Ji's body was trembling slightly. One of them stiffened, not daring to open his mouth to break the silence. The other's face was filled with tears as he watched quietly. This situation lasted for almost half an incense stick of time. Yiqing Luo might as well take action directly as she threw the both of them out. Go go go, don't disturb Ah Xian's rest. Closing the room door, Yiqing Luo returned to the bed and sat down. One hand holding the man's wide palm. As though this was the only way to let him feel that she was by his side. But her bed hadn't even warmed up in time. Suddenly he felt something tighten around his waist. Then he felt the world spin around him. Her body had already fallen onto the bed. The man's hot and hard body firmly fixed her delicate body between his arms. The familiar scent of sandalwood filled his nose. The man's long ink-like hair cascaded down and landed on her face, stirring her skin. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted through her hair. Her eyes reflected that peerless, noble and indifferent face. It was Zhou Xian. He woke up. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up slightly as she revealed a joyful look. "Ah Xian, your body? What's wrong with this sovereign?" Zhou Xian narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes as his thin lips curved upwards. "So impatient to fulfill your promise to this lord." Yiqing Luo's pupils shook. In his body, was it still the centrifugal goo that controlled it? Had he become the black-bellied, powerful overlord who had forgotten about her again? "Why are you in a daze?" Zhou Xian bent down and his thin lips came close to hers as he gave a low hoarse laugh. "Racking your brains to get this sovereign into this small room, a lone man and woman." Chapter 28:30. That pair of dazzling peach blossom eyes were pitch black and heavy. Shimmering flowing lights revealing a demonic profoundness. Yiqing Luo had always been unable to resist Zhou Xian's handsome man trap. Her little heart was already thumping wildly. Especially, the man had intentionally suppressed his magnetic voice, using the originally normal words instead of using that tone to make one blush. Yiqing Luo's cheeks were dyed red. The redder it was, the more unforgiving her mouth. "If you're not willing to follow me into the small room, how can I bring you in?" Zhou Xian raised his brows, looking at the young lady's blushing face, but pretending to be calm, not willing to suffer any loss. She only felt that in her heart, a certain place was gradually softening. His eyes grew deeper as he gazed deeply into her charming eyes. "Since the timing and location are favorable, this lord will not stand on ceremony and accept the benefits that you and this lord have exchanged." Saying that, he had already lowered his head as his lips were right next to her ear. The rich, scorching aura enveloped her entirely. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled slightly, as she was slightly dazed by the man's teasing. But she was still conscious. When his lips were about to move downwards, Yiqing Luo raised her hand as she hugged his head, stopping him from continuing. The man's action paused as his thin lips intentionally brushed past her ear, as he immediately raised his head. That cold and noble face was closer to her eyes by a few inches. His lips curled into a devilish smile. His voice was low and hoarse, deliberately seductive. "Why? You and I are not trading." Yiqing Luo pressed his head, as her voice also became extremely soft due to the man's deliberate teasing. His eyes flickered slightly as he quietly looked at her. Yiqing Luo slowly propped herself up as the hand that was hugging his head changed to grab his collar. "You're my man no matter how you feel about me now. You belong to me." Her tone was extremely overbearing. Her eyes were curved like a crafty fox. "Zhou Xian, remember this, I can let you do whatever you want to me, including everything. Not because of the so-called trade between us, but because you're mine." She didn't want Zhou Xian to hug her at the same time. She only thought that the intimate relationship between them was because of a deal. No matter how bad Yiqing Luo was. If the other party was not Zhou Xian, it was also impossible for him to use himself as a so-called trading item. Zhou Xian's pupils shrank imperceptibly. A dark light flashed in his eyes. In the next instant he pinched the girl's chin and pressed his lips against hers. This kiss wasn't gentle, but it wasn't overbearing either. Instead, it was a kind of thin, lingering kiss. The kiss made Yiqing Luo's brain turn slightly white as her eyes started to slacken. Their entwined hands gradually intertwined with each other's as they gently kissed. At the same time, the atmosphere between the two people who were chased out of the door was completely different and strange. Neither side said a word. It wasn't until the tightly shut door that the young girl let out a cry of surprise, followed by the young girl's coquettish murmur. Miao Yi finally realized something. She raised her hand and wiped the tears off her face. Then she turned around and walked towards the other side of the courtyard. Chapter 28:31. However, Miao Yi's emotions were unstable. Before Miao Ji could stop her, she had already rushed into the courtyard that was blocked by the vines. Miao Yi's feet had already sensed danger when she had just stepped into the vines. She had an innate sensitivity towards goo worms. She quickly retracted her feet and took out a powder that could restrain goo worms from the brocade bag at her waist to counterattack. Miao Yi's reaction was indeed very fast. However, she was impulsive and half of her feet had already stepped into the vines. even if she counterattacked. On the vines there were several black goo worms that were about the thickness of a finger, and they directly wrapped around Miao Yi's feet. Miao Yi's face was slightly pale, and she quickly sprinkled the powder on her feet. Suddenly, a hand stretched out and stopped her hand that was sprinkling the powder. Then she was brought into a warm embrace. You can't use the anti-goo powder. These are blood-sucking goo worms that move in groups. If you use the anti-goo powder to hurt one of them, thousands of blood-sucking goo worms will take revenge for you. The woman's gentle voice sounded beside her ears. Miao Yi's delicate body suddenly froze. She stood still in a daze. In her mind, a scene from a long time ago actually appeared. At that time, Miao Ji also held the little girl in her arms like this. Miao Ji used her unique gentle tone, patiently and seriously explaining the knowledge of goo worms that she did not understand. This scene, it had been a long time since she had felt it. Ugh! A muffled groan startled Miao Yi back to her senses. Miao Ji used all her strength to protect her in her arms. She directly used her hands to block the blood-sucking goo worms that climbed up for her. A few soft black goo worms instantly attached themselves to Miao Ji's fair arms. Almost in an instant Miao Ji's hands quickly dried up. And Miao Yi's eyes widened and she cried out in panic, trying to help her get rid of those blood-sucking goo worms. Miao Ji's hands firmly held her in place. Miao Yi curled up in her arms, unable to move at all. I'm fine. Miao Ji's voice was very soft and there was a hint of sobbing. Don't be afraid, it's good that you're fine. As she spoke, the corners of her mouth lifted into a smile. She didn't seem to feel that she had been possessed by the blood-sucking goo. Her withered arm used the hand that was holding Miao Yi and pulled Miao Yi behind her. Stand there and don't move, Miao Ji said softly. When she was sure that Miao Yi was standing in a place that she thought was safe. Only then did Miao Ji start to deal with the blood-sucking goo. A moment later, the blood-sucking goo were sealed back into the Poison Goo Institute. Miao Ji's face was extremely pale. She let out a sigh of relief. The feeling of losing too much blood rushed to his head. The dizziness in front of her caused her body to sway. Be careful. A pair of soft little hands caught her in time. Miao Ji was exhausted, but she forced herself to open her eyes. He glanced sideways and looked at the young girl beside him whose eyes were filled with worry. His eyes were filled with tenderness. Can you call me one more time? Miao Ji's voice was clearly choked with emotion. His eyes, which were filled with fatigue and lost their luster from time to time, were red-rimmed. Miao Yi felt her heart tighten. Her heart seemed to be fiercely strangled by something. Her nose also felt sour. Miao Yi moved her lips. But she couldn't say anything. After waiting quietly for a while, Miao Ji didn't hear Miao Yi call out the name that she had waited for so many years. Chapter 28:32. The corners of her lips curled into a reluctant arc as she spoke in a hoarse voice. No matter. It's all right if you don't want to. Aunt. Suddenly, Miao Yi's voice interrupted Miao Ji's words. Miao Ji was stunned as tears rolled down from her eyes without any warning. She choked with sobs as her teary eyes looked at Miao Yi without blinking. You're forgiving me. Why did you do that? Miao Yi pursed her lips tightly as her eyes stared at Miao Ji's obviously withered hand. Do you think that I will forgive you just like this? Miao Ji's voice choked as her throat tightened. Miao Yi raised her hand and supported her as they walked towards Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's room, which was the furthest away from the guest room. As they walked, the girl's icy cold voice was heard. I call you aunt because you are indeed my aunt. Even if I hate you, this is a fact that cannot be changed. Miao Ji's eyes turned redder as she opened her mouth to explain, but she didn't know how to explain. The two of them remained silent as they entered the room. Miao Yi helped Miao Ji to the seat as she held up her hand and checked it carefully. Rearing venomous worms in your own courtyard and you didn't prepare any antidote? My hand is fine. Miao Ji shook her head as she lowered her eyes to look at her withered hand which was placed on the table. It'll be fine in a few days. Miao Yi pursed her lips as she didn't say another word. It was another silent atmosphere as it lingered between the two of them. Miao Ji wanted to open her mouth to break the silence several times. But facing Miao Yi's expressionless face, all her courage was extinguished at this moment. Obviously, she wanted to sit together with Miao Yi and clarify all the misunderstandings in the past. Now this opportunity was right in front of her eyes. But she couldn't say a single word. This silence made Miaoji's heart feel even more uncomfortable. Finally, Miaoji couldn't take it anymore. Did you hear what I said to Miss Yi? Miao Yi replied calmly. The sacred maiden selection ceremony had ended and she wanted to be alone for a while. But when she saw Yi Qingluo's Chi-Chi, that furry little ball, it was obviously here to comfort her. She thought about it and decided to look for Yi Qingluo, to tell her about her relationship with Miaoji. But he had not expected Miaoji to take the initiative to look for Yi Qingluo. She brought Chi-Chi and followed behind Yi Qingluo and the others, all the way to Sacred Maiden's courtyard. He also heard all of Miaoji's memories clearly. Then, Miaoji's voice was hoarse. She paused and asked carefully, "So what do you think?" Miao Yi was silent for a moment. After a while he raised his head. Miao Yi's gaze was calm as she stared at Miaoji. There was no expression on her face. "Aunt, although you didn't kill Mother with your own hands, it doesn't change the fact that you were an accomplice in her death." Miaoji's throat tightened again and she couldn't say anything else. That was right. No matter how righteous her reason for handing Miao Yuan over was, it couldn't change the fact that she had personally sent her sister to hell. "I don't blame you," Miao Yi continued, "but I can't forgive you and I can't forgive myself." As she said that, her eyelids drooped. "If it wasn't for me, Mother wouldn't have died." Even though she was only 7 years old. But all the memories had long been engraved in her mind. Chapter 28:33. Her mother was seriously injured because she was protecting her. In order to protect her, her mother begged her aunt to use her own life to exchange for her safety for the next few years. Although, her aunt was her helper. But the real culprit was her. She was unable to forgive her aunt. And even more unable to forgive herself. You can't think in this way." Miaoji stuttered as she tried to persuade her. "Sister's death is not your fault, it's all I sent sister to Madame Miao's hands. You're right not to forgive me." Feeling Miaoji's anxiety and worry, Miao Yi slowly shook her head. She understood Miaoji's meaning. Miaoji didn't wish for her to go against herself because of this matter. She would rather she blame her. Rather than let her blame herself. Miao Yi closed her eyes, hiding the sadness in her eyes as she gave a low laugh. "Don't worry, Mother used her life to exchange for a future. I will not let Mother die in vain." As she said that, she slowly raised her eyes, which had regained its calm. "I will complete Mother's dying wish to take revenge for Mother, to become the Miao tribe's saintess." Miaoji's lips squirmed a few times. Miao Yi had already interrupted her words. "Earlier in the house I heard it too. Is it true that you have a way to detoxify the Overlord's poison?" Miaoji swallowed the words that were in her mouth. "Qing Luo is my benefactor and the Overlord is the person whom Qing Luo cares about the most. If you have a way before you ascend, can you tell me about it?" Miao Yi continued. Miaoji's lips trembled again and after some time she spat out a word, "All right." Miao Yi looked at her injured hand. "After the blood-sucking worm's poison is detoxified, then detoxify the Overlord." Seeing that Miao Yi had placed all her thoughts on helping Zhou Xian detoxify the worm. In order to stay in Nirvana realm for the last few days, to get along well with Miao Yi. Miaoji also shifted all her thoughts to the goo poison. What kind of worm was the Overlord in? What kind of person could plant a worm on the Overlord? Till now she still didn't know what worm was in the Overlord. Centrifugal worm and love worm. Miao Yi said word by word, "The target is Qing Luo." Miaoji's expression froze. "I thought His Majesty was poisoned by the heart separation spell, but there was also the love spell. How can anyone from the Miao tribe use these two forbidden goo techniques?" Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong worked together. Miao Yi didn't explain the situation in detail. These two types of venomous worms are originally mutually restraining and now both of them are in the Overlord's body. Moreover, the target is Qing Luo. Love venomous worm makes the Overlord obedient to Qing Luo, whereas venomous worm makes the Overlord forget everything about Qing Luo. She paused for a moment. If this goes on for a long time, even the Overlord's body will not be able to take it. Miaoji nodded solemnly. In fact, when Miaoji detected the centrifugal worm in Zhou Xian's body, she was already astonished. An emperor who was poisoned by the centrifugal goo. To think that he could still be in such sweet love with Yi Qing Luo. It showed how deep the overlord's feelings for Yiqing Luo were. Two kinds of venomous worms together and the target is the same person. This kind of worm is even more troublesome to detoxify. Miao Ji frowned. Let them rest in the Miao tribe for a few days. These few days I'll go to the Saint Maiden Pavilion to research on a safer method. Miao Yi remained silent for a moment. Tomorrow after the Sacred Maiden ceremony I'll accompany you. After tomorrow she would be the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. She also had the right to enter the Saint Maiden Pavilion. Chapter 28:34. In the other room the entire room was filled with the scent of spring. The shadow of the bed fluttered as it shimmered. The silver robe and red shirt were intertwined. The young lady's cheeks were flushed red and her half-opened eyes were bewitching. The man on top of her was gently teasing the flame. Yiqing Luo's mind was in a mess. But her consciousness was still awake. She tried to speak several times as her hands pushed against the man's chest. But before she could say a word, everything was sealed by a scorching aura that covered the sky and covered the earth. No, I can't. Between her murmurs, Yiqing Luo panted heavily as she spat out two fragmented words. The man who was still kissing lifted his head. That handsome, godlike face was quietly reflected in her eyes. The man's peach blossom eyes were as calm as water without any ripples. He looked as though he wasn't tainted with the slightest bit of confusion. But if one looked closely, he could tell. In the depths of the man's tranquil eyes, there was a flickering flame. The corners of his lips were filled with a hint of mischievous air. Drops of sweat rolled down from his taut muscles. This was obviously the performance of the cloud power of emotions. No way. Zhou Xian opened his mouth with a magnetic and seductive tone. Looks like I haven't worked hard enough? Teasing to such an extent. The young lady was still saying no way? Zhou Xian could tell. This was a rejection, not a woman's irony in bed. But a real sense of no way. No way. This was the first woman who rejected him. No. Yiqing Luo tried her best to stay awake as she trembled weakly. She panted heavily, not allowing herself to be bewitched by his beauty. This is the Sacred Maiden's courtyard, they will be back any time. No way. This is not an excuse. Zhou Xian supported himself with one hand as the other hand floated onto the young lady's blushing face. His fingertips slowly brushed past her half-opened misty eyes. His thin lips curled into a demonic cold arc. Your moans earlier were very enchanting, they are all tactful people. Such a simple sentence made Yiqing Luo's face burn even more. She bit her lips in embarrassment, avoiding Zhou Xian's deliberate teasing. Although the beauty was right in front of her, she also wanted to continue to the last step. But she did not forget. Zhou Xian's current condition could not continue. In Zhou Xian's body, there was still the existence of the centrifugal force goo. If they were just a little more intimate, the centrifugal goo would make Zhou Xian leave her. If he did such a thing, the centrifugal force goo would probably clamor even more fiercely. The last person to suffer was Zhou Xian. Now the room was lit with the tranquilizer incense, which stabilized the goo worms in Zhou Xian's body. But Yiqing Luo wasn't sure if Gongxiang would be able to suppress the corrosion of the centrifugal force goo if this carried on. She could not risk Zhou Xian's health. Xian. Yiqing Luo was thinking about what excuse to use to stop the man who had already gone crazy. However, just as he called out the name, the warmth and scorching heat covering his body abruptly withdrew. The man had already gotten off the bed and was standing by the side. Yiqing Luo was stunned. She wanted to get up but her whole body was limp without any strength. She could only turn her head to look at Zhou Xian. The man's slender fingers lightly touched her body. His slightly messy robe instantly tidied up. His face regained its usual indifference and when his eyes looked towards Yiqing Luo, there wasn't a single bit of emotion. Extremely cold. Chapter 28:35. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. An ice-cold chill spread through his limbs and spread throughout his body. Her face turned pale. What do you mean? Zhou Xian's eyes drooped as he squinted his long peach blossom eyes. His handsome face was icy cold. This lord has no interest in sleeping with you. Yiqing Luo's delicate body on the bed trembled slightly. Her 5 fingers clenched the quilt under her tightly. Her eyelashes trembled as she stared fixedly at Zhou Xian's eyes, with some obscure flickering. The man stood by the bed. Tall and slender, dressed neatly. She looked very noble and graceful. She, on the other hand, was lying on the bed with her clothes half taken off. The sharp contrast made Yiqing Luo's face turn paler. Her pink lips tightened, and when she spoke again her voice sounded bitter. Zhou Xian, you know very well that it's not that I'm unwilling. Zhou Xian sneered without saying a word. The curvature of his lips was like a smile, yet not a smile, which was extremely terrifying. That neither yin nor yang look made Yiqing Luo's anger gushed out for no reason. She clearly knew that Zhou Xian was like this because of the centrifugal worm. But, right now she was obviously concerned about Zhou Xian's health. It was for Zhou Xian's sake that she rejected such intimacy time and time again. On the contrary, he even took advantage of her and gave her a cold shoulder. She endured Zhou Xian forgetting her. Endured Zhou Xian's indifference. Endured Zhou Xian flirting with her without any feelings. She was full of grievances. Who would understand? Perhaps she was really a little princess who was spoiled rotten by Zhou Xian. Assassin, after all, couldn't endure the flood of grievances. Her weak body, which was teased by the man, had also recovered its strength. She abruptly sat up on the bed with a sliver of grievance in her eyes. She tugged at her robes tightly as she said through gritted teeth, "Do you still want to say that if I don't want to sleep with you, you'll go find another woman who's willing to sleep with you?" The young lady's angry words made Zhou Xian's brows suddenly crease tightly. Looking at the young lady's aggrieved face, her pair of charming eyes seemed to be rippling with layers of ripples, as if she was about to cry from grievance. Zhou Xian's heart inexplicably twitched. But very quickly his expression returned to that of desperation. His face didn't reveal any other emotions. He smiled calmly and indifferently, yes. Just one word and Yiqing Luo was about to explode from anger. Was it that interesting to bully her? She lifted her leg and kicked the side of the bed. Go, go, go. Go, I won't stop you. Go now. That leg directly kicked onto Zhou Xian's body. Zhou Xian took 2 steps back from the kick. Then he looked down and stared at the small foot that was still kicking his waist. The owner of that foot was obviously still throwing a tantrum. After the first kick she was completely unappeased and stuck close to Zhou Xian, wanting to kick again. Zhou Xian frowned as he gripped her leg tightly. Yiqing Luo gritted her teeth and swung hard. "Let me go. Didn't you not want to sleep with me? Aren't you not interested in me anymore? Why are you still grabbing my leg?" Zhou Xian's eyes darkened as he violently shook off her leg. Following that he turned around and left the room. Hearing the room door being opened, Yiqing Luo sat by the bed and stood up, wanting to stop him. But thinking of Zhou Xian's extremely cold attitude, her heart felt angry, vexed and wronged. She simply sat on the side of the bed and hugged her own legs. As though he was the only one who had a temper. She had always thought that she was Zhou Xian, who was pampered like a princess. She was poisoned by the centrifugal worm and wanted to become the master? Chapter 28:36. However, after 6 hours had passed, Yiqing Tong's expression changed. Yiqing Luo's grievance was gradually replaced by worry. After Zhou Xian walked out of the room, Yiqing Luo curled up on the bed alone as she kept on grumbling about Zhou Xian. The more she complained, the more wronged she felt. The more aggrieved she felt, the more Yiqing Luo wanted to let Zhou Xian know that she wasn't really a woman who had to pester him and couldn't leave him. It was time to let Zhou Xian have a taste of being treated coldly. Thinking in this way, Yiqing Luo didn't chase after him or search for him. Miao Ji and Miao Yi knocked on the door. Miao Ji's voice was slightly awkward as she asked cautiously, "Miss Yi, is it convenient for us to come in?" "What's inconvenient about it?" Yiqing Luo climbed down from the bed. Miao Ji and Miao Yi pushed the door and walked in, only to discover that Yiqing Luo was the only one left in the room, and Yiqing Luo's expression was extremely gloomy. Miao Ji looked around and asked, "Where is His Majesty?" "We quarreled and he ran away." Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and replied coldly. "Ran away?" Miao Ji's expression changed. Why would they quarrel? In the Saintess courtyard, every garden was filled with goo worms. The overlord already has goo worms in his body. If he provokes other goo worms, it will be very dangerous. Miao Ji's words made Yiqing Luo's eyes flash slightly as her body instinctively tensed up. "Wait for me here with Yi. I'll go look for a venerable sovereign." Miao Ji made a prompt decision. Yiqing Luo hurriedly followed up. "Me too. In this courtyard besides me all of you are in danger." Miao Ji stopped him. I don't want to have to look for you everywhere before I find Sovereign. Yi Qingluo's footsteps halted as her face was filled with a complicated expression. After a while she lowered her eyes and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you. Please. Help me find Zhou Xian." Regarding the Miao Gu, she was in a state where she only had a smattering of knowledge. Not to mention whether she could protect herself in the face of those Gu worms. He couldn't increase Miao Ji's burden. She could only stay here and wait for news. He watched Miao Ji leave. Yi Qingluo sat silently on the seat by the side. She hung her head and clenched her fists. "Weren't you guys fine just now? Why did it suddenly?" Miao Yi was afraid that Yi Qingluo would be overly worried and let her imagination run wild, so after thinking for a moment she opened her mouth to ask. She and Miao Ji were outside the door and heard Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian's intimate voices. Could it be an auditory hallucination? Yi Qingluo's fingers tightened even more, her voice was very hoarse. In his eyes I can't feel his feelings for me, my heart is very flustered. She raised her head, and her charming eyes were covered with a layer of clear and moist mist. She pursed her lips tightly as if she was holding back something. I clearly know that he was poisoned by the heart separation Gu and he was poisoned because of me, but I still feel wronged. She clenched her fists tightly. Tell me, am I very selfish? So selfish that I only want him to treat me well, but I don't want to see him acting like he doesn't care about anything. This is not selfishness. Miao Yi walked up to her, reached out her hand and gently patted her on the shoulder. Because you love Dizun and because you love him you want his response, don't you? Chapter 28:37. As Miao Yi said that she sat down beside Yi Qingluo. He held Yi Qingluo's hand and clasped it in his palm. "Qingluo, my aunt said she has the confidence to find a way to cure the Overlord's dual venomous worm. However, because it was a poison that countered each other, his aunt wanted to find a safer method. After the inheritance of King of Venomous Worms ends tomorrow, I will enter the Saint Pavilion and study it with my aunt." She comforted him in a gentle voice, "So just wait for us for a few days. Before my aunt ascends to the upper realm, we will definitely be able to find a way to cure the venomous venom for the sovereign." Hearing this sentence, Yi Qingluo's gaze had some changes. She raised her eyes and looked at Miao Yi. "Can the poison in Zhou Xian's body really be completely removed?" "Yes." Miao Yi nodded with certainty. Although Aunt has only been the Miao tribe's holy maiden for 4 years, she still reads the books in the Holy Maiden Pavilion every day. Ordinary people need 50 years to become the Miao tribe's holy maiden before they can ascend to the upper realm, but I only used a short 4 years to ascend. You should believe in my strength. I believe you. Yi Qingluo's eyes finally lit up. The next morning, Miao Ji walked into the room with a tired face. Yi Qingluo hadn't slept the entire night, and when she saw that Miao Ji had returned, her gaze went past her, but she didn't see that familiar figure whom she had been pining for. Miao Ji sighed softly. "I found the Overlord. He's fine, but..." She paused and didn't finish her sentence. Yi Qingluo's expression turned indifferent. "It's just that he doesn't want to see me, right?" Miao Ji didn't answer, which was a tacit admission. Yi Qingluo sat dejectedly by the side, her little fists clenched tightly as she angrily smashed it on the wooden table. "Haven't you already been inflicted with the centrifugal venom and turned into that noble and elegant high and mighty Overlord? Still acting like a child throwing a tantrum with me, isn't he childish?" Miao Ji and Miao Yi looked at each other. "It's fine if I don't want to see you. After he's cured, I'll see how he'll kneel on the washboard and beg for my forgiveness." Yi Qingluo gritted her teeth as she spoke. Although his mouth was stubborn, in actual fact Yi Qingluo's heart was finally at ease. It was not important whether Dmo Xian was willing to come back to see her. The most important thing was to ensure Dmo Xian's safety. It could be seen from Miao Ji's expression. Dmo Xian should be in a safe place now. "I've told the Overlord about the dangers in the Saint Lady's courtyard." Miao Ji massaged her aching forehead with her slender fingers and continued, "Don't worry too much. The Overlord is actually the safest in the Holy Maiden's courtyard. At least he wouldn't try his best to conceal the fact that Dmo Xian was afflicted with a venomous worm. He intends to stay in the Sacred Maiden's courtyard?" Yi Qingluo pursed her pink lips as she understood the meaning behind Miao Ji's words. Miao Ji put down her hand and glanced sideways at the young girl sitting beside her. I can see that even though His Majesty has been poisoned by the centrifugal parasite and should have been swallowed by the parasite, he still cares about you and values you. Miao Yi handed a cup of hot tea to Miao Ji and continued, I've read Gu books for many years, but I've never heard of anyone who was poisoned by the heart separation. Gu would be like Lord Dizun, paying so much attention and care to the person he should be keeping his heart from. Chapter 28:38. I know he won't leave me behind. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. No matter if I'm in his memories, he won't leave me behind. He was extremely certain of this. Towards the relationship between her and Zhou Xian, she had always been incomparably confident. I'm just worried. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and met Miao Ji's gaze. His feelings for me are too deep, so he will definitely have to contend against the centrifugal worm in his body. I'm afraid he will fail. According to the past, Zhou Xian was stimulated by the worm and fell into a coma. He would change the mode immediately after he woke up. But this time, Zhou Xian was stimulated by the worm web, but his consciousness was still eroded by the centrifugal worm. This made Yiqing Luo had no choice but to think and worry. Zhou Xian loved her. Even his soul loved her. There was no doubt about this. But now apparently, the time for the centrifugal worm to move was getting longer and longer. This went on for a long time. Zhou Xian's consciousness might really be eroded by the centrifugal worm. By then Zhou Xian would really leave her heart. But the love between the two of them. There was a possibility that it would cause Zhou Xian to be unable to take action, and then suffer the torture of the worm. What she didn't want the most was to see this happen. Go take part in the King of Venomous Worms inheritance ceremony. After you become the Sacred Maiden, come look for me at the Sacred Maiden Pavilion. Miao Ji put down the teacup in her hands and stood up. I'll go to the Sacred Maiden Pavilion to find the books on this. Aunt. Miao Yi frowned, obviously not agreeing to her arrangement. Yiqing Luo also stood up. In order to help me find Xian, you didn't sleep for the whole night, go rest first. It's alright, my body, I know. Miao Ji's brows were filled with a gentle smile. Her eyes were gentle as she looked at Miao Yi's direction, as though she was overjoyed by Miao Yi's worry for her. The exhaustion in her eyes was also swept away in an instant. Yiqing Luo and Miao Yi followed behind Miao Ji as they walked out of the Sacred Maiden courtyard. Outside the courtyard, there were several elderly dressed in Miao elders' attire. Standing at the forefront were the first elder and the second elder. When they saw the three of them, they immediately welcomed them with smiles. Saintess Lady Miao, Lady Yi, you're finally out. Miao Ji frowned slightly. Why are you waiting outside the Saintess yard so early? Did something happen? Great Elder Miao looked past Miao Ji and at Miao Yi, who was behind her. Then he retracted his gaze and said, Your Highness, we're about to enter the land of the Gu King to carry out the inheritance ceremony of the Gu King. But the Gu King, Miao Ji understood. These elders must be worried. Later, the Miao tribesmen and guests would be waiting outside the territory of the King of Venomous Worms. But the King of Venomous Worms was no longer in the King of Venomous Worms land. Yes, it was not only the Miao people who were disorganized. The other guests would probably laugh at the Miao people. They could not afford to take the risk. Miao Ji also realized this problem. She glanced sideways at the girl behind her. Miao Yi smiled. Before the ceremony begins, the Gu King will return to the land of the Gu King. Great Elder Miao's expression froze. Chapter 28:39. Former clan leader? Former eldest young miss? Miao Yi muttered these two terms softly, as her face revealed a smile which didn't look like a smile. Fifth Elder Miao's face turned pale as though he was vexed at himself for spilling the beans. But Fifth Elder Miao quickly adjusted his expression as he continued speaking in a righteous manner. Miao Yi, this elder only wants to know, do you know where the ancient Gu King is? Miao Yi didn't reply, but only looked at him quietly as she gave a light smile. Yiqing Luo walked up as she placed one hand on Miao Yi's shoulder, as a similarly treacherous sneer surfaced on her gorgeous face. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong had schemed to frame me and the Overlord. So aren't they already imprisoned in Qinyuesec's underground prison by Sect Master Yin? No one is allowed to visit them. Her voice was very gentle with a tinge of a young lady's unique sweetness. Like pearls falling onto a plate, it was extremely pleasing to the ears. But every single word that she said was like a bolt of thunder, exploding heavily in the few elders' hearts. They hadn't even had the time to digest this bolt of thunder, the shock and the emptiness in their hearts. What followed was a powerful aura that covered the sky and the earth, pressing down on them. I wonder how did the various elders see Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong? Yiqing Luo's tone suddenly turned gloomy. Fifth Elder Miao instantly felt a chill down his spine, as his forehead started to sweat profusely under this powerful pressure. Second Elder Miao was the first to react as he immediately gave a dry laugh, trying to break this awkward atmosphere. Miss Yi has misunderstood what old Five said is. Before. Right, that was before. Grand Elder Miao continued. It's not that we believe the previous clan leader's words, but to confirm in case something goes wrong at such an important occasion later, losing the Miao tribe's face. The two elders laughed dryly as they tugged Fifth Elder Miao's arm, pulling him back. However, Yiqing Luo and Miao Yi totally didn't follow along with what they said. Instead, a cold smile hung on their lips as a, "Do you think the both of us are fools?" expression. The smiles on the faces of the elders could no longer be maintained. Great Elder Miao glanced at Miao Ji, who was standing at the side and had not said a word since the beginning. With a gentle smile, he said, "We're about to head to the land of the King of Venomous Worms. Lady Miao, you should know what this means to the Miao tribe." This time Miao Yi spoke. However, the words that came out of his mouth caused the expressions of the elders to darken. She sneered, "To be honest, the Miao tribe has no special meaning to me. The reason why I am here and become the candidate for the Holy Maiden is not because I am interested in this position or the Miao tribe, but this is my mother's dying wish." These elders also knew about the grudge from back then. At this moment, their faces were dark and gloomy and they could not say a word. Miao Yi's rude and arrogant attitude instantly ignited Fifth Elder Miao's emotions. "What are you saying? Are you not from the Miao tribe? Don't tell me that the blood flowing in your body is not the blood of the Miao people?" Chapter 2840. He sneered incessantly, boiling with hot blood that no one could stop. "Ex-eldest Missy is right, people like you do not even have the Miao tribe in your heart." Old Five. "What are you doing?" Fourth Elder Miao quickly grabbed Fifth Elder Miao. The other elders' faces darkened, but they did not stop him. Obviously, they agreed with Fifth Elder Miao's words. Miao Yi's face gradually turned cold. Fifth Elder Miao seemed to be getting more and more excited as he continued to roar. "In my opinion, you don't even know the whereabouts of the King of Venomous Worms. You just want to destroy the Miao tribe in front of all the guests and tribesmen." He roared the last sentence. Fifth Elder Miao was finally feeling better. His face was full of disdain and mockery towards Miao Yi. His gaze towards Miao Yi was also full of hatred. "That's enough, Old Five." Grand Elder Miao, who had been silent for a long time, called out to stop Fifth Elder Miao. He stopped Fifth Elder Miao and let out a long sigh. "Missy Miao, don't blame Old Five. He is straightforward and never considers the consequences of his words. But what he said is not without reason." He paused and looked at Miao Ji. "I know that the Holy Virgin and Missy Miao have a close relationship. Why don't you say something fair? To maintain the dignity of the Miao tribe and stabilize the hearts of the tribesmen, our request is not too much, right?" Miao Ji had been the Holy Virgin for the past 4 years. She had been working with Grand Elder Miao to maintain the prosperity of the Miao tribe. Back then, it was Grand Elder Miao who firmly believed that Miao Yi was a direct descendant under the protection of the King of Venomous Worms and had been taking good care of her. Over the past 4 years, the two of them could definitely be considered friends. Grand Elder Miao understood Miao Ji's character. Miao Ji also understood that everything Grand Elder Miao did was for the betterment of the Miao tribe. If it had been anyone else, Grand Elder Miao's choice was indeed made for the sake of the Miao tribe. It was not too much. But the target of their questioning. She was the niece that she had found after much difficulty. How could she not protect her? In particular, Elder Miao Wu kept using the words of the former young miss to talk about this matter. Was she purposely trying to disgust her Yi? Miao Ji did not agree with Great Elder Miao's opinion for the sake of the Miao tribe's reputation, as Great Elder Miao expected. Instead, he sneered and looked straight at Fifth Elder Miao. "Is your request not too much?" She scoffed lightly, her eyes were covered with a layer of chilliness. Fifth Elder Miao actually knows that Yi is from the Miao tribe at this moment, and that the blood of the Miao tribe flows in her body? Why didn't you know about it before this? Fifth Elder Miao opened his mouth to retort. However, Fourth Elder Miao firmly held him down. This was the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. If the fifth brother dared to argue with the saintess, even if Great Elder Miao were to step forward, he would not be able to plead for old fifth. Miao Ji sneered as she looked at Fifth Elder Miao's suppressed rage. Her smile became even more sarcastic. As for, why did Yi appear during the saintess selection ceremony? Don't tell me you don't know the reason? Fifth Elder Miao's face darkened. The other elders lowered their eyes, not daring to look at Miao Ji's face. When Miao Yixiong was still in power. When Miao Rongrong was still Missy Miao. Miao Yi's existence was their humiliation. Miao Yi left the Miao tribe because Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong forced her to. Now she came back because. Chapter 2841. Miao Ji's words made Grand Elder Miao speechless. He sized up Miao Ji and Miao Yi. This pair of family members who had been separated for many years had finally reunited. From Miao Ji's point of view, it was impossible for her to be like before, where everything was for the benefit of the Miao tribe. Furthermore, based on his understanding of Miao Ji, for Miao Ji to put down her identity as the holy maiden and say such things, it was obvious that she was angry. Great Elder Miao calmed his restless heart. At the same time, he was observing the current situation. In his mind, he was quickly thinking of a way to deal with it. He would stand at the entrance of the saintess courtyard, waiting for Miao Yi. He was just worried that Miao Rongrong's words would come true. The more Miao Yi didn't want him to see the Gu King before the ceremony began, the more Miao Yi wouldn't let him. Grand Elder Miao, who had been brainwashed by Miao Rongrong, was eager to protect the reputation of the Miao tribe. But the more he suspected that Miao Yi and the King of Venomous Worms had nothing to do with each other. If the King of Venomous Worms was not with Miao Yi, then the inheritance ceremony of the King of Venomous Worms would not be able to proceed as planned, not to mention the Miao tribe's face was completely swept away. Once the other guests and clansmen knew that the Miao tribe's most treasured ancient Gu King had disappeared, what kind of devious thoughts did he have? If the ancient Gu King fell into the hands of someone with ulterior motives, the Miao tribe would definitely be affected. The more Grand Elder Miao thought about it, the more nervous he felt. He was even more determined to not leave until he saw the Gu King with his own eyes. Whereas Yi Qing Luo, who was releasing her powerful might by the side, maintained that faintly discernible sneer on her face. A pair of charming eyes stared straight at the few of them. It made their hair stand on end. Great Elder Miao wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. In his heart he felt a little resentful towards Fifth Elder Miao. Knowing that Yi Qing Luo, Miao Rongrong and the others had a deep grudge. And he had to mention Miao Rongrong in front of Yi Qing Luo. Wasn't this forcing Yi Qing Luo to interfere in this matter? Great Elder Miao looked at Miao Ji's gloomy face again. After some hesitation he decided to start with Miao Ji. Before he could say anything, Grand Elder Miao saw the girl with a calm expression on her face slowly walk past Miao Ji and toward Fifth Elder Miao. It was Miao Yi. The other elders were stunned by Miao Yi's sudden action. Fifth Elder Miao's livid and furious face also revealed a panicked expression. What do you want to do? Miao Yi's steps were slow. When he was 3 steps away from Fifth Elder Miao, he stopped. There was a smile on her face and there was a smile in her eyes as well. However, his laughter was filled with contempt, as if he was challenging Fifth Elder Miao's dignity. Fifth Elder Miao had a tyrannical temper to begin with, so how could he endure Miao Yi's mockery? In an instant, Fifth Elder Miao's face and neck turned red. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws as he pounced towards Miao Yi. Fortunately, Fourth Elder Miao understood Fifth Elder Miao's personality. Before Fifth Elder Miao could fly into a rage, Fourth Elder Miao hurriedly held onto Fifth Elder Miao with both hands, preventing him from rushing to his head. Facing Fifth Elder Miao's ferocious face, which was baring his fangs and glaring his eyes, Miao Yi could not help but tremble. Miao Yi just stood there as she gave a contemptuous and ridiculing smile. Following that, she raised up one finger and spoke calmly, "Since elders have accused me of so many crimes in front of me, then I will answer all of you one question at a time." Chapter 2842. Miao Yi's voice paused as she slowly smiled. "So it's reasonable for me to stand on Miao tribe's turf." The few elders looked at each other in dismay, not saying a word. Immediately following that, Miao Yi raised her second finger. "2. I concealed my ability because I want to live. After she said that, the few elders' expressions had a subtle change. Indeed, if Miao Yi hadn't concealed her ability back then, the her who had yet to grow up, she would absolutely die in Miao Rongrong and Madame Miao's hands. If it was them, they would also make the same choice. Momentarily, the few elders' gazes started to wander. Pfft, a light laugh was heard from the side. This laughter was as melodious as a silver bell. Yiqing Luo hugged Bear with both her hands as her face was filled with a smile which didn't look like a smile. She looked at the few elders' different expressions as she ridiculed. Fifth Elder Miao can ask such a brainless question. I'm really worried about your brain. A person with this kind of brain like yours can become the Miao tribe's fifth elder. No wonder Miao tribe has been going downhill for so many years. Fifth Elder Miao was so infuriated that his eyes turned red as he gritted his teeth and clenched his fists tightly, struggling with all his might in an attempt to break free from Fourth Elder Miao. Fourth Elder Miao suppressed his voice. Calm down, calm down. That's Yiqing Luo, the person whom the Overlord dotes on. Fifth Elder Miao was so infuriated that his chest kept heaving up and down, but he could only suppress it in his heart. Yiqing Luo strolled over lazily as her gaze swept past the few elders in front of her. Not only is Fifth Elder Miao's brain not working well, even his words are contradictory. It's so amusing. Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly. She raised her hand as her slender fingers pressed against her lower jaw, putting on an unfathomable look as she sneered. One moment you said he was coveting Miao tribe's power, coveting Miao tribe's sacred maiden position, and the next moment it changed to Yi wanting to destroy Miao tribe. She paused as a chilly smile appeared between her brows. The speed of her speech also slowed down as she said word by word, "Don't you feel that your words are simply too stupid?" Fifth Elder Miao's face turned as black as charcoal. He gritted his teeth so hard that they made cracking sounds. The other elders looked at each other in dismay. The more they looked, the worse their expressions became. The smile on Yiqing Luo's lips grew even more radiant. It was like a blooming rose, exuding a coquettish aura. You all are truly laughable. Yesterday you all thought that Yi was a rare Miaogu genius and racked your brains to make Yi stay. But today, all of you are doubting Yi again. Yiqing Luo's ridiculing laughter made those few elders instantly feel ashamed. I'll say it one last time. Miao Yi's elegant voice sounded out calmly. I chose the Miao tribe and chose to participate in the Holy Maiden selection ceremony because of my mother's dying wish. For my mother's sake I cannot destroy the Miao tribe. After all, no matter how unbearable this place was, it was also the place where her mother and aunt had been saved. It was also the place where she grew up. Of course, Miao Yi wouldn't say these words out loud. Great Elder Miao stared into Miao Yi's eyes for a long time. In the end he was defeated. His arms drooped down as he clenched his fists tightly. Forget it. Since you're the one who passed the selection's final round, and Sacred Maiden has already acknowledged you, this elder will believe you this time. Chapter 2843. Saying that, Grand Elder Miao bowed towards Miao Ji and led the other elders back to prepare for the ceremony. They had barely taken a few steps. A young lady's chilly voice was heard from behind. Wait a minute. Grand Elder Miao and the others' hearts tightened. Hearing this voice, they felt a surge of coldness. Their feet subconsciously stopped. The young lady's chilly voice rang once again, and this time, there was a hint of a smile. Elders, don't be in a hurry to leave. You've already asked clearly what you wanted to ask, so next it's my turn. His voice made the elders feel as if a heavy weight was pressing down on them once again. Grand Elder Miao was the first to turn his head back as a Maitreya Buddha-like smile hung on his face. Time is pressing and we still have many things to prepare. If Miss Yi has anything to ask us, why not we wait for the King of Venomous Worms to acknowledge the inheritance ceremony before we discuss in detail? I've always not had much patience. Yiqing Luo replied straightforwardly. If I'm impatient, I can't guarantee that I won't get angry in the middle of the ceremony. Her pink lips rose slightly as she smiled lazily. Her tone sounded like a young lady complaining with a hint of coquettishness. But the few elders could hear the threat in the young lady's words. The expressions of the few elders instantly turned ugly. To be threatened by a young lass. They had lived for more than half of their lives and had always been respected. How could they feel at ease? But because of Yiqing Luo's status, they didn't dare to show their anger. Hurry and ask what you want to ask. If you delay the King of Venomous Worms' inheritance ceremony, you will bear the consequences alone. Fifth Elder Miao was originally very aggrieved, and on seeing Yi Qingluo's arrogance, how could he bear with his anger? Especially Fifth Elder Miao, who was intentionally brainwashed by someone. He totally disliked Yi Qingluo. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong have been released? Yi Qingluo didn't beat around the bush as she directly looked into the few elders' eyes and asked. Fifth Elder Miao's eyes opened wide. You, what nonsense are you talking about? Grand Elder Miao's eyes flashed as he immediately stood in front of Fifth Elder Miao, putting on his signature amiable smile. Has Miss Yi misunderstood something? The former chief and the former Miss Yi did such a shameful thing to the Miao tribe. How could they be released? As he spoke, he gave Second Elder Miao a look. He gestured to Second Elder Miao to drag Fifth Elder Miao away. Then he continued with a smile. Old Fifth's words were said by the former First Miss and Old Fifth. Old Fifth had always been on good terms with the former clan leader, so he always remembered these words. That's why there was such a misunderstanding. Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao pulled Fifth Elder Miao away. Miao Yi noticed the commotion and frowned. He was about to open his mouth to stop her, but he caught a glimpse of Yi Qingluo's glare. Miao Yi was stunned and stopped what she was about to say. He could only watch as Fifth Elder Miao was dragged away. Seeing this, Grand Elder Miao breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. The smile on his face became even more amiable. I will find an opportunity to explain the matter regarding the former clan chief and eldest young miss to Old Fifth. Yi Qingluo only smiled gently but didn't continue the conversation. Chapter 2844. This time round, Yi Qingluo didn't stop Grand Elder Miao from leaving. When Grand Elder Miao left, his footsteps were slightly hesitant. After a few steps, he didn't hear the young lady stopping him. Immediately, he hastened his footsteps and left speedily. He was afraid that Yi Qingluo would go back on her words and pester him endlessly. Grand Elder Miao's figure quickly disappeared in front of the three of them. The area outside the Sacred Maiden's courtyard instantly quietened down. Miao Yi's brows creased tightly as she looked at Yi Qingluo and asked, Qingluo, why didn't you let Fifth Elder Miao speak clearly? Yi Qingluo's lips curled up slightly as she squinted her eyes with a smile which didn't look like a smile. In the depths of her eyes, there seemed to be a stream of light which kept flickering. This stream of light reflected into Miao Ji's eyes. Miao Ji only felt a chill throughout her body, as though a cold ray had spread from her feet to her entire body. Miao Ji couldn't help but rejoice silently. Luckily her Yi was friends with Yi Qingcheng. She was an enemy. She was afraid that even she was not Yi Qingluo's opponent. No need to ask, I can tell that Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong should have been released. Yi Qingluo's voice was calm without any excess emotions. Before coming here, those few elders should have met Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong. Miao Ji and Miao Yi had the same feeling about this. But they couldn't believe that this was true. Miao Yi's brows creased even tighter. Those two are the Miao tribe's traitors. They have offended the Overlord and you and also offended the Qingyue sect. Those few elders seem to be more selfish and only want to secure their own elder's position. Why would they take such a huge risk to hide the truth about those two people? To those people we are after all outsiders. Miao Ji gave a cold smile as her lips twitched. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong have been in power for so many years and are completely Miao tribe people. I can confirm that if Miao Rongrong had a chance to make a comeback, they would absolutely not hesitate to kick us aside and help Miao Rongrong up. They can't bear to kick Miao Gu's genius away. Yi Qingluo scoffed lightly. One becomes Sacred Maiden and the other becomes clan leader. It's a happy ending. Miao Yi and Miao Ji looked at each other, their expressions changing. Although the Miao tribe leader was the tribe leader, his power was not as great as that of the Saintess. The Holy Maiden of the Miao tribe was the true leader of the tribe. If Miao Rongrong became the Saintess of the Miao tribe, even if Miao Yi was the chief of the Miao tribe, she would still be suppressed to the point where there was no room for her to breathe. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong sure have a good plan. Yi Qingluo's slender brows rose as she looked at Miao Yi. These few elders have apparently been brainwashed by Miao Rongrong and they don't trust you. If I didn't guess wrongly, later when the recognition ceremony starts, your every action will be restricted. It was just as Great Elder Miao had said. They would never allow any accidents to happen. To prevent Miao Rongrong's words from becoming a reality. This was to prevent Miao Yi from thinking of ways to ruin the Miao tribe during the ceremony. They would carefully control everything about Miao Yi. Those two, what are they planning? What are they trying to do? Miao Ji's expression darkened. Miao Rongrong, don't tell me you're planning to fight for the position of Holy Virgin during the ceremony? Chapter 2845. Miao Ji gritted her teeth. I'll go and watch the inheritance ceremony. I want to see what they're up to. No need. Yi Qingluo's lips curled up slightly, revealing a calm smile. I'm here, rest assured. Miao Ji wanted to refuse. After all, they were in the Miao tribe and her identity as the Holy Virgin still had some prestige. However, before Miao Ji could reject him, Miao Yi replied, Auntie, you should go rest and rest. Wait for me to go to Holy Maiden Pavilion to find you. Miao Ji swallowed the words that she was about to say. Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong's reputation has been ruined because of what happened to the Qinyu clan. Yi Qingluo smiled as she looked at Miao Ji. Even if those few elders want Miao Rongrong to become the sacred maiden, that would depend on whether the Miao clansmen agree to it or not. She paused, her eyes curved into a smile. After all, Miao Rongrong, and her own father, performed a scene of taboo love. No matter how magnanimous the Miao tribesmen are, they will not be able to accept this. Then she tilted her head and said, Moreover, the main reason why Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong ended up like this was because they tried to poison Zhou Xian, the great Dizun. Moreover, with my current status and the attitude of the Qinyu sect, is it even possible for Miao Rongrong to become the Holy Maiden? The two of them listened carefully to Yi Qingluo's words. His eyes instantly lit up. Yi Qingluo's words weren't without reason. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's deeds were a disgrace to the Miao tribe. Miao Rongrong really wanted to return to the Miao tribe. It was definitely not that easy. Miao Ji's heart was immediately at ease. Qingluo, I'm curious. Miao Ji recalled Great Elder Miao's reaction. If those two people had really returned from the Qinyu sect, why did Great Elder Miao still dare to ask you to investigate the Qinyu sect? Everyone knew that Yi Qingluo and the leader of the 3,000 Peach Blossoms had a close relationship. All he had to do was ask. The 3,000 Peach Blossoms would soon bring news of the Qinyu sect. The matter of Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong being brought out of Qinyu clan would soon reach Yi Qingluo's ears. But Grand Elder Miao seemed as though he wasn't worried that Yi Qingluo would search for news of Qinyu sect. Yi Qingluo's eyes curled into a smile as her eyes shimmered with an additional sense of ridicule. Even if the 3,000 Peach Blossoms went to investigate, the news they would probably bring back would be Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong are indeed in the underground prison of Qinyu sect. Those two people. Miao Yi's face paled. Yi Qingluo's gaze gradually sunk as it turned gloomy and deep. Those two people in Elation sect should have been swapped out. Swap. Miao Yi and Miao Ji were stunned. Miao Yi clenched her fists in anger. We should have exposed them just now. They want to make it impossible for me to become the saintess in peace, and I will make it impossible for them to conduct the inheritance ceremony in peace. This point you have already done it. Yi Qingluo glanced at her. Miao Rongrong and those elders should be very certain that you don't have the whereabouts of the king of venomous worms on you, so they specially went to the saintess courtyard to force you to hand over the king of venomous worms, so that they could be at ease. You still refuse to let him take a look at the king of venomous worms, and adding on to the brainwashing words that Miao Rongrong said to him, he was definitely absent-minded when he conducted the inheritance ceremony, and was in a trance, unable to set his mind at ease. Chapter 2846. Since those elders are unable to completely trust you and have other intentions, then let them carry their last bit of hope and fall into despair. Yi Qingluo's voice was languid with a terrifying charm. Destroy their disloyalty in front of everyone so that Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong have no chance to make a comeback. Let them know in the entire Miao tribe only you alone, is the person that they truly need to be loyal to. As Miao Yi listened, tears welled up in her eyes. Yi Qingluo's schemes. All to pave the way for her future in the Miao tribe? Looking at Miao Yi's reddened eyes, Yi Qingluo raised her hand and rubbed her head. All right, don't be in a hurry to be touched. After everything has settled down, I don't mind if you repay me with your body. Miao Yi's originally touched heart was tickled by Yi Qingluo's words. She burst out laughing. I don't dare to devote my life to you. I'm afraid His Majesty will tear me apart. The atmosphere returned to a relaxed one. When Miao Ji saw this scene, she was relieved. Yiqing Luo was by Miao Yi's side. She did not need to worry that Miao Yi would be humiliated during the ceremony. On the contrary, she should be more worried about those who were seeking their own death and offended Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo was so protective of Miao Yi. What she needed to do now was to repay Yiqing Luo, to find the best way to remove the love worm and the centrifugal worm at the same time. The exhaustion from a sleepless night disappeared in this moment of relaxation, and drowsiness rushed to his head. Miao Ji pressed the corners of her eyes and waved her hand. Go to the land of the king of venomous worms. I'll go back to my room to rest and wait for your good news. The two looked at each other and smiled. The two of them walked side by side toward the land of the king of venomous worms. He had only taken a few steps. Yiqing Luo acutely sensed something. She frowned and turned to look at a certain place in the saintess courtyard. What's wrong? Miao Yi asked. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept the surroundings and didn't detect any other presence before she retracted her gaze. Nothing much, maybe it's my misperception. She felt as if someone had been staring at her. Yiqing Luo didn't take this episode to heart. Pulling Miao Yi along, they quickly disappeared from the saintess domain. Yiqing Luo didn't know. Not long after she left, a tall and slender figure walked out from the darkness. That figure was like a god, noble and elegant. The figure was dressed in a flowing purple robe, and his black hair was let loose behind him. That cold and peerless face exuded an icy coldness. Since you want to see her, why do you have to sneak around? Miao Ji turned around and looked at the man behind her. The great Dizun is starting to be sneaky? Dmo Xian's expression was cold, his icy cold peach blossom eyes fixed on the direction where Yiqing Luo left. What you said to this lord last night, is it true? Whether it's true or not, the overlord should already know the answer, right? Miao Ji replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Overlord, you must have felt that Miss Yi is a very special existence to you. Dmo Xian's eyes darkened. He tilted his face to the side and his thin lips moved as he spat out coldly. The separation curse makes me forget my beloved? That woman is my beloved? When he asked this question, Dmo Xian's tone was obviously stiff, as though he was admitting his inner feelings towards Yiqing Luo. Chapter 2847. Although I'm not sure how much love you and Miss Yi have without the centrifugal worm. Miao Ji's smile became gentler, but I'm sure that you absolutely love her. Dmo Xian's pupils contracted as the hands by his side clenched into fists. Miao Ji noticed the man's tensed-up emotions. This proved that Dmo Xian had indeed taken her words into his head. She smiled. The reason why I told you about the centrifugal worm is not because I want to use this to build a relationship with the overlord, but... Miao Ji paused as her voice became gentler. I don't want to see Miss Yi upset. Difficult? Dmo Xian frowned as he spat out two words in a hoarse voice. Yeah, after all, she loves you. Miao Ji nodded seriously. You used to love each other so much, she loved you so much, but you don't remember her and always used sharp words to poke her heart. How could she not be upset? Miao Ji lowered her eyelids. Last night, didn't I tell the overlord that after you left? Miss Yi was alone in the room, very sad, very upset. Moreover, she didn't sleep last night because she was worried about you. Dmo Xian recalled earlier when he saw the obvious greenish-black under Yiqing Luo's eyes. All the muscles in his body tensed up. There was a kind of feeling in his chest. He couldn't describe that feeling. Only his mind was filled with the greenish-black under Yiqing Luo's eyes and the words, didn't sleep last night. Overlord, I just want to give you a piece of advice. Miao Ji had been paying attention to the changes in Dmo Xian's emotions. Although it wasn't real. But Miao Ji noticed it. When he mentioned Yiqing Luo, the atmosphere would always freeze for a moment. It was enough to prove that the current Dmo Xian didn't really have no feelings for Yiqing Luo. If you believe in your heart, believe in your first feeling. Then don't do anything to hurt Miss Yi. Miao Ji continued to speak. Otherwise, when the poison in your body is cured, the one who will regret it will be you, overlord. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened, filled with a deep black. Like a whirlpool, it kept churning in his eyes. He clenched his fists tightly again. After that, his figure flashed and disappeared before Miao Ji's eyes. An extremely cold aura rose in the air. Miao Ji quietly looked at the direction where Dmo Xian had left. He didn't seem to be affected by the cold light at all. Slowly, a smile appeared on his face as he shook his head. Then he sighed softly, turned around and entered the Saintess courtyard. The hour was drawing near. Miao Yi and Yi Qingluo arrived late. Fourth Elder Miao had been waiting on the path to the land of the King of Venomous Worms. The moment he saw Miao Yi, he rushed forward anxiously. "Miss Miao, you're finally here. Boss and the others have been waiting for you for a long time." After the bell rang, it was time for the ceremony to begin. Now, there was only the time it took for an incense stick to burn before the bell would ring. However, the King of Venomous Worms that Miao Yi said would appear before the inheritance ceremony started was still nowhere to be found. More than 300 tribesmen of the Miao tribe had gathered outside the land of the King of Venomous Worms. There were also more than 200 guests. Why they were here? Other than witnessing the birth of the Miao tribe's saintess. The most important thing was to see how the ancient King of Venomous Worms looked like. The elders were so anxious that they couldn't even stand properly. Chapter 2848. Miao Yi glanced at Fourth Elder Miao indifferently. "What's wrong? Is there anything wrong with the inheritance ceremony?" "Oh no. Everything is ready." Fourth Elder Miao wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said anxiously, "But, Miss Miao, that ancient Gu King, you haven't..." Miao Yi raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, "Fourth Elder Miao, do you not believe me?" "No, that's not it." Fourth Elder Miao did not dare to say that he did not believe her. He broke out in a cold sweat and said, "What I mean is that all the preparations are in place and the time is almost up. First, Miss Miao should send the King of Venomous Worms back to the land of the King of Venomous Worms before the guests arrive to prevent others from thinking too much." Miao Yi narrowed her eyes, tilted her head and smiled at the young lady beside her. "Qing Luo, do you think I should listen to him and take out the King of Venomous Worms first?" Miao Yi was very clear. With her status, it was basically impossible for her to avoid the control of the elders. For the Miao tribe's reputation, the 4 elders would definitely join forces to suppress her aura. If he was really suppressed by the 4 elders at the same time, wouldn't that fulfill Miao Rongrong's wish? So Miao Yi decisively hugged onto Yi Qingluo's thigh. As long as Yi Qingluo was around, it didn't matter what tricks those elders wanted to play. They had to consider Yi Qingluo's identity and the power behind her. As expected, just as Miao Yi turned her words towards Yi Qingluo, Fourth Elder Miao's face instantly turned pale. He opened his mouth and tried to stop her several times. However, he couldn't think of any reason to stop him. If Yi Qingluo's identity was still Yi Luo, even if he had a slight relationship with the Overlord, they could still muster up the courage to gamble for the future of the Miao tribe. But Yi Qingluo was Yi Qingluo. She was the elder sister of the new leader of the West Continent's Three Springs sect, the strongest student of the best academy, Heavenly Academy, the little hero who saved the students of various continents and saved the West Continent from the calamity of extinction. In addition, as everyone knew, the Overlord pampered West Continent's Yi Qingluo in the palm of his hand. Even his only mount, the 9-tailed white fox, was at Yi Qingluo's disposal. This was enough to prove Yi Qingluo's status in the Overlord's heart. How would they dare to show any disrespect towards Yi Qingluo? Fourth Elder Miao was begging with all his might, hoping that Yi Qingluo would not interfere in the Miao tribe's matters. Immediately following that, Yi Qingluo glanced sideways and met Miao Yi's line of sight as her pink lips rose slightly. Fourth Elder Miao's heart was in his throat. Yi Qingluo chuckled, "Of course you can't hand it over. Can't a silly lady like you tell that my heart isn't on your side at all? If you hand over the King of Venomous Worms, I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your position as the Sacred Maiden." Yi Qingluo's reply made Fourth Elder Miao's heart tremble. His entire face instantly turned deathly pale. He stood stiffly on the spot with a look of disbelief on his face. They couldn't believe that Yi Qingluo could actually say out their inner thoughts so clearly. They had no intention of leaving any face for their elders. Fourth Elder Miao's face sank. He gritted his teeth and frowned. He was infuriated, but he still forced a smile. Miss Yi, what are you saying?" "Miss Miao is the only direct descendant of the Miao tribe. Of course we will be loyal to Miss Miao." Chapter 2849. Miao Yi put on an obedient look as she nodded. "Then I'll hide the King of Venomous Worms well." Yi Qingluo's face showed that the child was worth teaching as she replied with a warm smile. "And hide it well. Don't let those people with ill intentions steal the king of venomous worms. Fourth Elder Miao, who was standing by the side. When did Miao Yi become so obedient? Yesterday's aura was fully unleashed. Not long ago when they met, she still had a noble and cold attitude. How did she become such an obedient person now? Furthermore, Yi Qingluo's words. Was she treating him as non-existent? Was he purposely mocking their elder for pretending to obey but secretly opposing in front of him and harboring evil intentions? Fourth Elder Miao was so infuriated that his beard was flying, but on account of Yi Qingluo's face, he could only keep his anger to himself. Unable to ask for the whereabouts of the king of venomous worms. The three of them were getting closer and closer to the land of the king of venomous worms. Fourth Elder Miao's heart was getting more and more flustered. This Miao Yi was simply impervious to everything. Plus Yi Qingluo was protecting her by her side. Even if they wanted to follow the original plan to control Miao Yi with the four of them, it was impossible. The nearer they got to the land of the king of venomous worms, the more anxious Fourth Elder Miao was. Looking at the two young ladies in front chatting happily, his heart was getting more and more anxious. How could the two people in front not feel Fourth Elder Miao's impatience, as well as his increasingly anxious mood? They only acted as though they knew nothing. Like the few disloyal people in the Miao tribe. The more they behaved calmly and freely, the more they scratched their hearts and liver. Not knowing. Would the Miao father and daughter pair hiding in the dark be anxious? Very quickly this question was answered. Right at the land of the king of venomous worms, at the entrance of the rear mountain, an old man dressed in a white robe walked over in quick steps. Apparently this old man had been waiting at the entrance of the rear mountain right from the start, just to block Miao Yi. Eldest young Miss Miao, hurry, hurry, there's only less than half an incense's time left. You have to hurry and prepare to start the king of venomous worms' inheritance ceremony. The person who came was the slightly plump and amiable-looking Great Elder Miao. He had an anxious and friendly smile on his face. The moment they met, he wasn't asking about the Gu King, but he was worried that he had missed the best time to inherit. Big brother. Fourth Elder Miao clenched his fists and immediately rushed towards Great Elder Miao. Grand Elder Miao glanced at him but did not say anything. Then he looked at Miao Yi, who was standing motionless at the side, and called out, "Young Lady Miao?" Great Elder Miao's attitude has changed so quickly. I can't quite get used to it. A languid voice came from the young lady beside Miao Yi. Yi Qingluo leaned lazily on Miao Yi's shoulder as she squinted her eyes. Not long ago didn't Grand Elder Miao put on a questioning expression, wanting Yi to hand over the Gu King first? What's wrong? There's less than the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn left. Great Elder Miao isn't going to ask anymore? He was just that straightforward. It was so straightforward that it made those elders of the Miao tribe who had other thoughts to feel suffocated. Great Elder Miao was indeed Great Elder Miao. After hearing Yi Qingluo's ridicule, there wasn't any change on his expression. He only looked at Miao Yi with some guilt as he smiled. Since this elder said that I believe eldest young Miss Miao, then I really believe her. Chapter 2850. She had to admit that Grand Elder Miao's words weren't wrong at all. If it was someone who didn't know the truth, they might really believe Grand Elder Miao. Miao Yi's eyelashes fluttered as she slowly raised her eyes and met Grand Elder Miao's eyes. Grand Elder Miao? You really believe in me? Grand Elder Miao's gaze was calm as he gave a calm smile. Of course. After the ceremony, you will be the Miao tribe's sacred maiden. This elder's heart is naturally on your side. Miao Yi revealed a smile on her face, but beneath her eyes surfaced a sliver of undetectable ridicule. Her tone was appropriately touched. With Grand Elder Miao's words, I feel assured. Grand Elder Miao still wanted to say something. Fifth Elder Miao's urging voice was heard from behind. Boss, time is almost up. If you have anything to say it on the way. Right, there's not much time left. Grand Elder Miao's face was filled with an amiable smile. Eldest young Miss Miao, please. He stretched out his hand as he gestured for Miao Yi to leave first. The entrance to the rear mountain of the land of the King of Venomous Worms was a tunnel that led directly to the King of Venomous Worms' nurturing grounds. Entering from the rear mountain entrance, they just needed to make a few turns and they would reach their destination. Miao Yi held Yi Qingluo's hand and was just about to leave when she was stopped by Grand Elder Miao. Miss Yi, please hold on. Miao Yi's petite body stiffened as her eyes flashed. Yiqing Luo's eyes revealed a, as expected, deep meaning as her lips curled slightly as she smiled at Grand Elder Miao. This is the Miao tribe's secret grounds. Although Miss Yi and eldest young Miss Miao have a close relationship, but ultimately you're not a Miao tribe member, so. Grand Elder Miao explained in a warm voice. Saying that, he intentionally paused for a moment. Yiqing Luo's brows rose slightly. Oh? I can't enter? This tunnel can only be entered by Miao tribe's sacred maiden, Miao tribe leader, Elder Miao tribe, and the last sacred maiden candidate. Grand Elder Miao revealed a difficult expression. If Miss Yi doesn't believe me, you can ask the Miao tribe members. This has been the Miao tribe's rule for hundreds of years. I didn't say I don't believe you. Yiqing Luo waved her hand. Since it's the Miao tribe's rules, it's not good for me to request the elder to break the Miao tribe's rules for me, so I should abide by it. Just as she finished this sentence, Yiqing Luo could obviously sense that fifth Elder Miao's eyes, which was filled with anxiousness, revealed an unconcealable complacency. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed past a gloomy glint as the smile on her lips grew wider. But I have a few words which I wish to speak to Yi alone. Great Elder Miao thought that Yiqing Luo was reminding Miao Yi to be careful and not to trust them too much. But when he thought about the plan they had arranged, it was flawless. He didn't take it to heart. Time is pressing. If Miss Yi has anything to say, please say it quickly. With that, Great Elder Miao and the other elders took the lead and entered the tunnel. However, after entering the tunnel, their gazes were fixed unblinkingly on the two people who were whispering to each other. They were extremely vigilant. He had witnessed Yiqing Luo's treachery. They could not allow any accidents to happen. However, what they were worried about did not happen. Yiqing Luo only said something to Miao Yi. Following that, she hugged Miao Yi as though she was cheering for her. After that, she turned around and walked towards the direction of the guest passageway. Grand Elder Miao heaved a sigh of relief. Looked like he had overestimated Yiqing Luo. After all, she was just a 15-year-old young lady. Her experience of mingling in the world was still too tender. Seeing Miao Yi walking towards the tunnel. Chapter 2851. Has Miss Yi left? Fourth Elder Miao looked behind Miao Yi as he intentionally asked. Miao Yi's expression was calm as she revealed a smile. Great Elder Miao and the rest had personally witnessed Yiqing Luo's figure leaving, so they didn't suspect anything as they immediately replied, "Time is of the essence, let's hurry over now." Saying that, he turned around and led the way in front. Exchanging a glance with the other three elders. The few of them rolled their eyeballs as they understood what was going on. And fifth Elder Miao was the one who couldn't control the emotions on his face the most. As he walked forward, his peripheral vision kept glancing at Miao Yi. His face was filled with a complacent, sinister smile. The few of them each had their own thoughts. The few of them didn't know. Just outside the tunnel, that young lady who was walking slowly towards the guest passageway, her steps were stiff and extremely swaying. His blazing red robe seemed to have been extinguished. There was not the slightest bit of vigor in it. When Zhou Xian rushed over, what he saw was the swaying forward, totally unaware young lady. Step by step, she brushed past his shoulder and continued walking forward. The young lady's long hair cascaded down, covering the young lady's face. It made one unable to see the emotions on the young lady's face clearly. The young lady kept her head lowered as she walked forward stiffly. Zhou Xian, who was ignored, frowned as he squinted his peach blossom eyes in displeasure. He quickly chased up and grabbed the young lady's arm as with a flash, he drilled into the dense forest. His wide palm pressed directly on the young lady's shoulder as his deep and hoarse voice was extremely deep. "Yiqing Luo." But the young lady who was pressed against the tree trunk by him didn't show any signs of struggling. Nor did she feel any throbbing when she heard his voice. The young lady just quietly lowered her head. There wasn't any fluctuation of emotions. "Why? Treating me as if I don't exist?" Zhou Xian gave a cold laugh as a dangerous glint flashed past his eyes. The young lady still didn't reply. So calm that there wasn't a single ripple. To the extent that Zhou Xian couldn't even feel the young lady's breathing. "Wait a minute." Breathing? Zhou Xian's cold face moved as his eyes flashed a few times. He raised his hand and his large palm swiftly went past that long hair as he clasped her lower jaw. Her long hair was forced to scatter and her face was forced to be revealed. Zhou Xian's pupils, upon meeting that face, involuntarily constricted a few times. He spread his arms and tossed the person in his hands out. The red-clothed girl fell to the ground. Under her messy long hair was a face without any facial features. In the tunnel, Miao Yi had been vigilantly watching the movements of the four elders. Originally, the four elders were leading the way. And when they were about halfway through the journey, Miao Yi realized that she had been unknowingly surrounded by the four elders in a formation, trapping her in the middle. Walking in front were first elder Miao and fourth elder Miao. Second elder Miao and fifth elder Miao stood behind him. Miao Yi was secretly startled. She had been careful enough. Unknowingly, she was surrounded by a few elders and she was completely unaware of it. Looked like the things which Yi Qing Luo had guessed. Step by step, everything was developing towards reality. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of a stone knocking against the rock wall was heard. At the same time, the surrounding elders who seemed to be walking leisurely, speedily rushed up and surrounded Miao Yi.